Get ready to dim the lights and lock your doors. Friday Night Frights is here to haunt your weekend. Every Friday night, we bring you spine-chilling tales of the macabre, the mysterious, and the downright terrifying. From cursed artifacts to shadowy creatures lurking in the dark, these stories will keep you on the edge of your seat long after the episode ends. Are you brave enough to listen? Tune in and be sure to subscribe to our channel for more eerie episodes. It was like any other car on the road. It was automatic, self-contained, and could drive itself. In the Twilight Zone, we saw and heard stories that seemed so fantastical, so unbelievable, that we could only dream of them being a thing of the future, like cars that drove themselves. It makes you wonder if Elon Musk was a fan of the Twilight Zone when he was a boy. Road Stop by David Mason. The highway stretched away in ruler straight perspective toward both horizons, black and shining in the sun like a river of ink. Beside it, the bright pastel buildings of Rest Stop 25 stood among the green trees. Occasionally a car shot past, a flash of metal and a hiss of split wind, but the road was one which was used more often at night and was nearly empty in the afternoon. Sam was the only attendant on duty. Stop 25 needed only 2 human attendants, even at its busiest hours. He sat, staring out at the highway, his elbows on the lunch counter, his round face blank, but his mouth set tightly. The phone at his elbow emitted a small, grunting noise. "You still there?" the phone voice said inquiringly. "Yeah?" Sam said, still staring at the highway. "Well," the voice paused. "Look, it might not come your way. It usually turns west at the New Britain intersection." "Not always," Sam said. "It went by here once before." "It almost never stops anyway," the voice said firmly. "It won't stop." Sam shrugged and said nothing. "Okay then," the voice said. "I called you about it anyway." "Thanks." Sam turned away, still watching the road. Far off, a speck of metal gleamed, growing larger. The distant high sound of brakes began as a car decelerated, coming toward the stop. It was just an ordinary car, Sam told himself. That other car was still hundreds of miles away, but his hands were damp as he watched it grow larger. It was an ordinary sedan with 2 people in it. It swung into the stop's parking area, and its doors slid open smoothly. A small red light flashed on its arched front. The repair signal. In response, the doors of the repair shop opened. The car waited as a man and a woman emerged from its padded interior and moved slowly into the repair shop. The doors closed behind it. The couple came toward the restaurant where Sam stood waiting. "Hi," the man said to Sam. "Afternoon." Sam moved to the counter. "Something to eat while you're waiting, folks?" The tall, dark girl glanced out at the closed doors of the repair shop. "How long's that car going to take?" she asked in a tired voice. "I wanted to get home tonight." "Not long," Sam said. "It didn't look like anything complicated." "How can you tell?" the man asked, sitting down. "It could take all night." "Like something to eat while you're waiting?" Sam asked. The woman stared at the lunch racks critically. "I never like these places to eat in," the woman said, curling her lip. "You never know how long the food's been stored in the robot." "Oh, Grace," the man said wearily. To Sam he gave an apologetic shrug. "Just coffee." "Well, you don't know," the woman insisted. "I mean..." She watched Sam drawing the coffee into a cup. I used to cook a lot by hand, till Jack had the automatic kitchen put in. He never had any stomach trouble till then. It's getting so everything's, I don't know, it's all out of reach. You don't know what's happening anymore, like the car. I wish I knew what she's talking about half the time, Jack said, blowing on his coffee. Sam leaned on the counter, looking past the couple toward the empty road. I know what the lady means, Sam said, almost to himself. You get to thinking, well, I can remember when people used to drive their own cars, themselves, steering and everything, except on the biggest highways. And everything got done with people. People made things and cooked food and grew plants. Everybody was busy all the time. It was better then. The man called Jack shrugged. Sure. Everybody always talks about the good old days, but I don't see many of them going to live in the woods. Like Grace, she says she doesn't like the automatic kitchen, but she uses it. It saves time, Grace said. I guess I will have coffee too, mister. It saves time, she says, Jack said. For what? She's got too much time now. I wonder what it must have been like in the old days here, Grace said vaguely, staring around the lunchroom. Everybody running in and out, all the drivers, trucks with men in them, the way you read about it in the historical novels, men that drove their own cars in all kinds of weather. Jeez. Just like on TV, Sam said, grinning. I hope we get the car out of there pretty soon, Jack said anxiously. He glanced out toward the silent garage. I always wonder what would happen if the machinery stuck or something like that. How would you ever get your car out? It doesn't get stuck, Sam said. A peculiar look crossed his face, and he added, Not anymore. Did it ever? Sam shrugged. Oh, well, 20 or 30 years ago, all this automatic stuff wasn't quite as good as it is now. Cars, repair shops, things went wrong sometimes, like the Traveler. The Traveler? The woman looked up. Oh, that's just a ghost story, like the Flying Dutchman, isn't it? The lunchroom was completely silent. Sam was no longer paying any attention to the couple sitting at the counter. He was close to the big window, standing stiffly, feet apart, like an admiral on a ship's bridge, his eyes studying the empty horizon. There, where the lines of the road met with the precision of a drawing board exercise in perspective, he thought he saw a fleck of light. It isn't when it goes past, Sam said in a quiet, tight voice. He looked at the window, his back to the other two. His words meant mostly for himself. It's not its going by. That doesn't bother me, he repeated. It came by my old place 5 or 6 times, I remember. That's why I finally asked to be transferred out here, where it hardly ever goes by. But I could have gotten used to it. I mean, you don't have to look at it or anything. It's just another car. Old, sure, but there's no difference. A car goes by, that's all. Only... You mean it's real? The woman asked in a low voice. Her husband's eyes were looking out toward the empty road, following Sam's look. The Traveler, he said, without looking at his wife. Sure it's real. Why do you think they don't make that model of car anymore? It's real. I knew somebody who saw it once. There might even be 2 or 3 travelers, Sam said, watching the distant glitter of light. There was certainly a car coming, just a car, although it was still too far away to tell for sure. A haunted car? The woman said, her eyes wider. Jeez! It isn't a haunted car, her husband said. It's just one of the earliest makes of automatic highway cars. Everything automatic. Steering, destination set, just like any car is nowadays, only it wasn't quite perfect somehow. They'd get into their car, Sam said, his eyes picking out distant microscopic details. The high flaring fins, the double headlamps, lit up, although it was broad daylight on the road. He knew what the rest would be. It was moving so slowly, but it always moved slowly, barely 30 miles an hour, as if somebody wanted you to look and see it. They just got in, the way anybody would do, Sam said. They set a destination, and the windows closed up, and the air conditioner went on. The car went out on the road. Only it never got there, the other man said, wherever it was going to go. But, the woman looked puzzled, wouldn't anybody stop it? I mean, wouldn't it run out of fuel? Or, well, how did the people in it get out? It does just what any car does, her husband told her. It has a battery that's fueled by radiation in the sky. You can't just stop a robot-controlled device, not till it's good and ready. But the people in it, she said, they'd starve or something. The car called the Traveler, rolling at the stately 30 miles an hour it always held, was coming down the road now, and the two men stood, watching. The woman, a little behind them, watched too, her face growing whiter. No one said anything as the old-fashioned car rolled by, straight and steady down the highway, holding the center of the lane as sharply as it always did. There was a film of dust inside the windows, though the Traveler was clean and shining outside, but the film did hide the white bone faces, the skeleton hands that had long ago stopped trying to break through those closed windows. They never did get out, the man named Jack said, as the Traveler rolled on, growing smaller along the endless road. I don't mind when it goes past, Sam said, his voice thinner-edged. I really don't. It's just a car. Things like that used to happen, I mean. It's a car. He looked at the people, his mouth loose. As long as it just goes on, that's all right. But I keep thinking someday it'll stop, and the door will open. And maybe, just maybe, the people inside'll want to eat lunch. He giggled uncontrollably, and then choked it back. Outside, the big hangar doors of the repair shop opened. The car that had been inside appeared. It moved out and stopped, its doors open invitingly. Your car's ready now, Sam told the couple. So long, folks. Have a nice trip. Number 8 by Jack Ritchie. I was doing about 80, but the long flat road made it feel only that fast. The red-headed kid's eyes were bright and a little wild as he listened to the car radio. When the news bulletin was over, he turned down the volume. He wiped the side of his mouth with his hand. So far they found 7 of his victims. I nodded. I was listening. I took one hand off the wheel and rubbed the back of my neck, trying to work out some of the tightness. He watched me, and his grin was half sly. You nervous about something? My eyes flicked in his direction. No. Why? Should I be? The kid kept smiling. The police got all the roads blocked for 50 miles around Edmonton. Yeah, I heard that too. The kid almost giggled. He's too smart for them. I glanced at the zipper bag he held on his lap. Going far? He shrugged. I don't know. The kid was a little shorter than average, and he had a slight build. He looked about 17 or 18, but he was the baby-faced type and could have been 5 years older. He rubbed his palms on his slacks. Did you ever wonder what made him do it? I kept my eyes on the road. No. He licked his lips. Maybe he got pushed too far. All his life somebody always pushed him. Somebody was always there to tell him what to do and what not to do. He got pushed once too often. The kid stared ahead. He exploded. A guy can take just so much, then something's got to give. I eased my foot on the accelerator. He looked at me. What are you slowing down for? Low on gas, I said. The station ahead is the first I've seen in the last 40 miles. It might be another 40 before I see another. I turned off the road and pulled to a stop next to the 3 pumps. An elderly man came around to the driver's side of the car. Fill the tank, please, I said, and check the oil. The kid studied the gas station. It was a small building, the only structure in the ocean of wheat fields. The windows were grimy with dust. I could just make out a wall phone inside. The kid jiggled one foot. That old man takes a long time. I don't like waiting. He watched him lift the hood to check the oil. Why does anybody that old want to live, anyway? He'd be better off dead. I lit a cigarette. He wouldn't agree with you. The kid's eyes went back to the filling station. He grinned. There's a phone in there. You want to call anybody? I exhaled a puff of cigarette smoke. No. When the old man came back with my change, the kid leaned toward the window. You got a radio, mister? The old man shook his head. No, I like things quiet. The kid grinned. You got the right idea, mister. When things are quiet, you live longer. Out on the road again, I brought the speed back up to 80. The kid was quiet for a while, and then he said, It took guts to kill 7 people. Did you ever hold a gun in your hand? I guess almost everybody has at some time or another. His teeth showed through twitching lips. Did you ever point it at anybody? I glanced at him. His eyes were bright. It's good to have people afraid of you, he said. You're not short anymore when you got a gun. No, I said, you're not a runt anymore. He flushed slightly. You're the tallest man in the world, I said, as long as nobody else has a gun, too. It takes a lot of guts to kill, the kid said again. Most people don't know that. One of those killed was just a boy, I said. You got anything to say about that? He licked his lips. It could have been an accident. I shook my head. Nobody's going to think that. His eyes seemed uncertain for a moment. Why do you think he'd kill a kid? I shrugged. That would be hard to say. He killed one person, and then another, and then another. Maybe after a while it didn't make any difference to him what they were. Men, women, or children. They were all the same. The kid nodded. You can develop a taste for killing. It's not too hard. After the first few, it doesn't matter. You get to like it. He was silent for another 5 minutes. They'll never get him. He's way too smart for that. I took my eyes off the road for a few moments. How do you figure that? The whole country's looking for him. Everybody knows what he looks like. The kid lifted both his thin shoulders. Maybe he doesn't care. He did what he had to do. People will know he's a big man now. We covered a mile without a word, and then he shifted in his seat. You heard his description over the radio? No, I said. I don't think anybody really knows what he looks like. He looked at me curiously. But you weren't afraid to pick me up, a hitchhiker? No. Should I have been? His smile was still sly. You got nerves of steel, lady? I shook my head. No, I can be scared when I have to, all right. He kept his eyes on me. I fit the description perfectly. Yeah, I guess you do. The road stretched ahead of us. On both sides there was nothing but the flat plain. Not a house, not a tree. The kid giggled. I look just like the killer. Everybody's scared of me. I like that. Well, I hope you had fun, I said. I've been picked up by the cops 3 times on this road in the last 2 days. I get as much publicity as the killer. I know, I said, and I think you'll get more. I thought I'd find you somewhere on this highway. I slowed down the car. How about me? Don't I fit the description too? The kid almost sneered. No way. You're a lady. You got brown hair. His is red, like mine. I smiled, but I could have dyed my hair. The kid's eyes got wide when he knew what was going to happen. He was going to be number 8. Killer on the Night Drive by Will F. Jenkins. Madge was ready to leave the house and in the act of turning out the lights when the telephone rang. She picked it up and Mr. Tabor identified himself. He sounded as if he had a bad cold, although Madge hardly knew him well enough to identify his voice anyway. He said apologetically that he'd heard that Madge, he called her Mrs. Haley, of course, was driving over to Colchester tonight. It was an imposition for him to ask, but it would be a great favor if she could take a passenger with her. His niece, Eunice, who was in town for the day for the first time, wanted to go over there to get the train home. Madge felt uncomfortable. When anyone in town mentioned Colchester and the Colchester Road, you felt uncomfortable these days. But to hear Mr. Tabor say it was even more disturbing. I was just about to leave, Madge said, but if she can be ready fairly soon, I'll be delighted to take her along. She's ready now, Mrs. Haley, Mr. Tabor said faintly, as if from far away. She'll be waiting on the porch. I have to leave, so I'll thank you now on her behalf. He hung up, and Madge turned off the lights and went out to the car, still feeling uneasy. No woman liked to be reminded of what had happened to Mr. Tabor's wife. She'd been murdered while driving alone over the Colchester Road at night. The same thing had happened to another girl, too, but that wasn't quite the same as someone you knew being murdered. Nobody in town knew the other girl, but Madge and Mrs. Tabor were nodding acquaintances in the town supermarket and on Main Street. The car started briskly, and Madge guided it 2 blocks ahead and 1 to the right. Through the gloom, she saw a figure waiting on the steps of Mr. Tabor's unlit house. Madge opened the right-hand door. "You're Eunice?" she called cheerfully. "I'm Mrs. Haley." "It's very good of you," the girl answered in a flat voice. "I hope this doesn't put you out." "Nonsense," said Madge. "I'm glad to have company. Climb in and toss your bag in back." The girl obeyed silently. She was a little bit angular and a little bit clumsy. Her hat was severely plain. She wore spectacles that seemed to Madge to be tinted, although it was hard to tell in the faint glow from the street light up the block. She sat primly, her hands folded in her lap, as Madge turned and headed out of town. Presently the houses grew further apart. Street lights no longer appeared, and on either side of the road fields stretched out and dark masses of woodland showed beyond them. The road flowed smoothly toward them as Madge settled down for the 40-mile run to Colchester. It was really a beautiful evening. The pungent smells of growing things that rose out of the spring dark made Madge very glad to be young and alive and driving to meet her husband tonight. And at that, Madge was reminded again of Mrs. Tabor. One reason Mrs. Tabor's death had been especially horrible was because she was a bride, and Mr. Tabor had been so happy and so proud of her. "It's nice having someone with me," said Madge. "I really don't like driving at night, but my husband gets into Colchester at 10 tonight, and if he waited for a bus, he wouldn't get home until after 3 in the morning. We have dreadful service here." The girl was silent for a second, then said, "Yes." Madge's ear was caught again by the flat, low-pitched tone of Eunice's voice. It had no human quality at all. Eunice added, as if in apology for being curt, "But it isn't bad in the daytime." "No," Madge agreed. She was silent for a space, then said, "How did Mr. Tabor know I was driving over?" The girl hesitated before she answered. "I guess somebody mentioned it." "Well, they'd hardly—" Then Madge stopped. She realized that although she never would speak of the Colchester road to Mr. Tabor for fear of hurting him, others might not feel the same. "I got the gas and oil and tires checked today. I guess I mentioned it to Bob, the filling station attendant, where I was going. I guess that's the answer." The girl said, "Probably," and sat quietly, her hands in her lap. The road made a sharp bend, and woodland closed in on them. The air was chilly among the trees, and then it warmed again as the woods dropped away, and they were on a clear stretch once more. "Mrs. Haley," the girl said suddenly, "do you carry a pistol when you drive at night?" Madge jumped a little. She laughed, although not quite with ease. "Good heavens, no! Why?" Then she said, "But I suppose your uncle thinks women should." She felt strange. She was going to drive over the highway on which Mrs. Tabor had been killed 12 months before. There had never been any clue to the killer. It was just assumed that somehow Mrs. Tabor, who also had been on her way to meet her husband, had been persuaded to stop her car and pick up someone. The car was found later. It had been sprinkled with gasoline and set on fire, and any clues it might have yielded were destroyed. Mrs. Tabor, meanwhile, had been found bludgeoned to death. There were other details, but that was the way the local paper phrased it. She heard herself saying with morbid interest, "How long had your uncle and Mrs. Tabor been married?" "About 3 months, the girl said. She added in the same expressionless manner, "We're near the turnoff, aren't we?" "Why, yes," said Madge. She grew confused. One doesn't expect a newcomer to know such things. She didn't remember Mr. Tabor's niece ever having visited him before, and she'd more or less assumed that she was a complete stranger. As far as that went, Mr. Tabor wasn't a long-time resident himself. He'd come to town about 1.5 years ago to accept a rather good position, and after 3 months he married and brought his bride to town. Only 3 months after that, Mrs. Tabor had started to drive to Colchester one night, and the murder had occurred. Madge remembered clearly and uncomfortably the first time she'd seen Mr. Tabor after the murder. He was a small man, and he'd looked shrunken and mummy-like by then. But he didn't go away. He stayed on, living in the house in which he'd spent his honeymoon. Madge couldn't understand his doing that. The car came to the turnoff. There was nothing conspicuous about it. It was just a secondary road that branched off the main highway and wound across country to Colchester. In 35 miles, you could see on it only one small country store and maybe 4 or 5 farmhouses set far back from the highway. Most of its length, the road cut straight through heavy woods. Madge turned into it. The air was fragrant with the aromatic smell of pine. It was cooler, too, but one no longer had the feeling of being in open space. Above and ahead there was a narrow ribbon of sky in which stars shone brightly. The headlights stabbed on and showed pine tree trunks alongside. There was a bare screen of underbrush at the road's edge. The angular figure beside Madge said, "Lonely in here, isn't it?" Madge pressed harder on the accelerator. The car picked up speed. "One thing's certain," she said, trying to smile. "Nobody could make me stop to pick them up on this road." Mrs. Tabor, Aunt Clara, I suppose I should call her, Eunice said, didn't pick up people either, but that night she did. Madge set her lips and drove. Presently she said awkwardly, "Eunice, has Mr. Tabor ever had any idea of who killed Mrs. Tabor?" Eunice said impassively, "There's always the chance that the man who did it will be caught." There was a slight pause. Another girl was killed 6 months later, you remember. Madge suddenly regretted deeply that she had not made some excuse to avoid riding with Eunice. It was bad to be reminded of Mrs. Tabor, but to be reminded at the same time of that other battered body of an unknown girl made it worse. The police were never able to find out even so much as her name. All that was known was that she had been dead 6 weeks or so when her body was found by some local hunters. "Your uncle," said Madge, "is staying in town then, and in the hope of catching his wife's murderer?" Eunice answered quickly. "The same man killed that other girl. There was a scorched road map under her body when they found it. Apparently she was driving too, only the killer got rid of her car. It's never been found, but obviously it was the same man. The crimes were identical." Madge said, shocked, "But that means—" "That the killer is still around," said the flat voice. "His name was even given to the police, but they didn't believe it for an instant. He's too well thought of." You talk as if you know who the killer is," protested Madge. Eunice said, almost scornfully, "Of course." The car swept past a small field of shoulder-high weeds. Just before the woods enveloped them again, there was a sudden sweetness in the air, honeysuckle. Then the damp, aromatic smell of pine once more. Madge was sensitive to odors. Consciously or otherwise, she associated some scent with everyone she knew, all her friends certainly. Now she suddenly realized one of the things that made this girl Eunice seem strange. She did not use perfume, not even a scented soap. Madge's forehead began to knit into a faint frown. Her heart started pounding oddly, as if in anticipation of something that would occur to her presently. She said uneasily, "Even if Mrs. Tabor's murderer were caught, I can see that it might be hard to convict him now. My husband's a lawyer, and he says the evidence in such cases has to be airtight." The voice beside her said in a detached way, "There was no motive for those particular women to be killed. A jury wants to see a motive for a crime, naturally, preferably a motive they could feel themselves." Madge admitted uncomfortably, "My husband said something like that." She fumbled in the handbag beside her. "You drive," said the flat voice. "I'll light your cigarette." Madge ignored the quick impulse she had to decline. She knew she shouldn't take her eyes off the road when she was driving this fast. She felt a cigarette touch her lips. Then Eunice snapped a lighter. Its tiny flame rose up before Madge's face. She glanced down. The car wavered. Then the wheel resisted, and the car righted itself. The wheel was being held. Madge felt sheer paralysis numb every muscle in her body. "I've got the wheel," Eunice said. Madge remembered to puff. The cigarette was lit and the lighter withdrawn. The wheel was released. Everything was as before. The car went swiftly between the tall tree trunks. There was the same clean smell of damp underbrush and pine. Everything seemed exactly as it was before. But everything was very different. Madge's whole body was cold. Her heart was hammering hysterically. In that one glance down at the flame as it was held to her cigarette, she had seen Eunice's hand closely and clearly lit. The fingernails had no nail polish. Their ends were not rounded, but square, like a man's. The knuckles were like a man's. There were short black hairs on the back of the hand, like a man's. Eunice was a man. A voice inside Madge's brain chattered hysterically. You aren't sure it was Mr. Tabor on the phone. He talked as if he had a cold. It could have been anybody. It wasn't Mr. Tabor at all. It was somebody who wanted to ride with you. There was a light by the side of the road ahead. Numbed as she was, Madge drove on blindly. She saw other lights, which were windows, and knew dumbly that it was the single store between the cutoff and Colchester. But she was a quarter of a mile beyond it before she realized that she could have stopped there. She could have swerved the car and crashed it against something, and people would have run out, and she would have been safe. But it was too late now. She went on driving. The muscles of her throat were constricted. The car sped through the darkness, its headlights flaring before it, and now and again a moth fluttered helplessly in their rays. Once a pair of eyes glittered by the roadside. As the car sped past, she saw it was a cat, miles from any house, crouching in the grass at the road's edge. "Women really should carry pistols when they drive at night," said the voice beside her. "But maybe they wouldn't have the nerve to use them." Madge made an inarticulate sound. Then an idea came to her. If she could keep him talking... "I doubt that I could shoot anyone," she said. Listening to her own voice, she was astounded. It sounded quite human, almost convincing. "I couldn't imagine harming another human being." Her passenger said quietly, "I don't know that the man who killed Mrs. Tabor and the girl who was never identified could be called human. He possibly couldn't help it. But there used to be stories about werewolves." "Oh, but that's nonsense. People can't turn into wolves," Madge said nervously. "Some people turn into something," said the figure beside her. "Once in a year, or once in 6 months, they feel something stirring in their minds. Their eyes change. They glow. They're bright and restless and terribly intent. They feel unbearable tension. They're obsessed, and they have to kill." Madge expected to hear herself scream, but her voice went on with incredible control. "Then the psychiatrists ought to watch out for the bright-eyed people." "Oh, but people like that are cunning," her passenger said softly. "They don't let anybody notice their eyes." The unbecomingly hatted head turned toward Madge. In the dim light from the instrument panel, the tinted spectacles regarded her in a wholly inhuman way. "You see," Madge's passenger said, "I've studied about them. I wanted to understand, and it seems that there have always been such people. In old days they killed like wolves, and wolves were blamed, so the story of the werewolf began, the story of a person who got into a house in human form and then turned into a wild beast to kill and rend and tear his victim. It was wonderfully clever of the people who kill to start that story." The figure in the seat beside Madge seemed strangely amused. "But I can't believe that." Her passenger sat quite still. The hands were folded primly. Somehow the quiet was more menacing than any muttered threats would have been. Madge's hands and arms didn't tremble because they felt paralyzed, but the wheel rolled a little unsteadily. "I suppose they're frightened after they've killed," her companion went on. "They would be, but they learn cunning. They never live in one place very long. They kill once or twice, or maybe 3 times, and then they move away. But they act like very nice people on the surface, and their friends are sorry to see them go. They never dare to get too prosperous, however. When they're doing well, it would be a temptation to stay on, and then they'd kill maybe a 4th or 5th time in the same place, and that would hardly be wise. Oh, they are cunning. They have to be. The woods thinned for a moment. Far away, a single unwinking dot of light indicated an isolated farmhouse, far from any neighbors. Then the trees closed in once more, and Madge knew that from here to the very outskirts of Colchester there would be no other light. She heard her voice say brightly, "Let's talk of something else. Why choose such a gruesome subject, Eunice?" "Mrs. Tabor was killed somewhere along here," her passenger said softly. Then Madge's hands began to shake. It was not a mere trembling, but an uncontrollable shake. The road was very straight here, and a long way ahead there was a light, a tiny red light. She pressed on the accelerator and found herself praying agonizingly that the man beside her in a woman's dress wouldn't notice the spot of light until she had caught up with it. The man beside her continued quietly, "You had your car checked today, Mrs. Haley. You mentioned at the filling station that you would be driving to meet your husband at the Colchester station. That wasn't discreet. People still talk about Mrs. Tabor's murder. The filling station attendant mentioned that you'd be driving the same way tonight, the same way she did. If the killer heard about it..." Madge was willing now to keep him talking on any subject, even this, until she caught up with whatever that was ahead. "Oh, but I'm sure no one would think..." "Someone would. Someone who was obsessed, who felt unbearable tension inside, someone who knew the time had come when he had to kill." "Why," Madge said with effort, "why, you speak of it as if someone planned to kill me." The figure beside her said softly, "I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all." Then the voice changed. "There's something on the road ahead. It looks like an accident." The light was not moving. She overhauled it swiftly. If she could only get to where someone else was, no matter who, then she knew not only what was in the road ahead, but whose lights had been turned up, because she could see who it was. She recognized the red motorcycle on which Bob, the boy from the filling station, dashed about town. It lay there, its lights slanting brightly across the road. There was Bob, limping out into the glare. He had a bandage on one leg. "I've got to stop," Madge said. "I know him. It's Bob from the filling station. He was the one who checked my car today." The figure beside her seemed to relax. A crazy, frantic hope came to Madge. The masquerading man must be armed, but wouldn't he hesitate to try to kill a man and a woman? A woman alone would be a certain victim, but if she could get Bob into the car, the figure that pretended to be Eunice might sit quietly and get out in Colchester, and nothing would happen at all. The brakes squealed shrilly. The car stopped. There was some spilled gasoline on the road, and Bob, limping, almost hopping, in the headlight rays. He came to the window beside Madge. "Mrs. Haley," he said with relief, "I was hoping you'd be coming along behind me instead of having gone on ahead. I hit something in the road and skidded, and my leg's all messed up." He stopped. He'd seen that Madge was not alone. She said unsteadily, "Bob, this is Eunice, Mr. Tabor's niece. She's riding to Colchester with me." "Oh," said Bob. "Get in the back seat," said Madge urgently. "You'll want a doctor. I'll rush you over to Colchester." Bob hesitated. "I don't know. I hate to leave my bike? All I need is somebody to help me get it standing up. With one bum leg, I can't do it, but I don't need much help. It's not too heavy." The quiet voice beside Madge said, "I'll help. I've got a pair of heavy gloves in my suitcase. I'll get them out and help, if you'll pull up a little so we won't block the road, Mrs. Haley." Bob went limping back to his motorcycle to wait. Madge was buoyed by hope. She pulled ahead and over to the side of the road. The man beside her said softly, "Move up a little farther. Don't stop the motor, Mrs. Haley." And then he turned and spoke rapidly, intensely. "Mrs. Haley, I'm really John Tabor. My wife was killed near here by someone she knew. She would never have given a stranger a ride. She'd had her car checked that day at the filling station, just like you did. She was worried about driving alone at night." Madge gasped and tried to speak. "I've been watching everyone who could be a suspect," Mr. Tabor told her. "I finally singled out Bob. I noticed him acting strangely just after my wife's death, and then again 6 months ago. Nothing happened immediately, only then they found that other girl's body, and she'd been dead just 6 weeks. I knew then that I was right, and I became sure of it as I watched. Tonight, he knew you were coming. He said so. You'd have stopped for him, too. You know him, just as my wife did." Mr. Tabor leaned closer. "He thinks I'm a woman. I'll start back, then he'll call to you to stop your motor and help. He's quite sure he'll have both of us for victims tonight." But what shall I do?" Madge was close to tears. "Just drive on," John Tabor said. "That's all. I think he's going to be surprised tonight." The angular figure went back along the highway's edge. Madge sat stiff as a doll at the wheel of the idling car. There was no light except the narrow ribbon of stars overhead and the patch of road lighted by the motorcycle's beam. Bob was silhouetted against the lighted space. He watched the small, skirted figure as it approached him, and as Madge looked, Bob seemed to change. He was a black shape against a lighted background, and the shape changed very gradually from that of a tall young man favoring an injured leg to that of an animal crouched to spring. One of the arms moved slowly, and it came back into silhouette, holding a heavy object. The hand that held it swayed it gently back and forth, making ready. Then Bob spoke. "Mrs. Haley," he called, "if you'll turn off your motor and come help too, it won't be any time at all to get the bike up and going." Madge couldn't force an answer. Then the crouched figure began to move forward with a swift, rolling gait, and it did not limp. The injured leg was a trick. Madge let in the clutch. She never remembered driving those last 10 miles to Colchester. It was her body that did it, taking charge while her mind was filled with a kaleidoscope of terrifying scenes. So this was the way Mrs. Tabor had been killed. She'd stopped at the filling station, as Madge had done, to check her car for the night drive, and she'd chatted with Bob and told him where she was headed. The unknown girl must have been driving through, and she'd stopped for gasoline too and told Bob she planned to drive to Colchester that night. After her body was found, there was still nothing for the police to go on. Mr. Tabor's talk of glittering eyes wasn't enough even to justify an investigation. It wasn't anything at all without evidence, so Mr. Tabor could only wait patiently for that look to come into Bob's eyes again, and then find out what woman would be driving alone and drive with her. Madge drove like the wind until the lights of Colchester showed through the trees. Then she slowed the car and took it sedately into Colchester. She stopped at the town's one red traffic light and parked with trembling precision by the railroad station. Then she sat still, shaking. She couldn't speak. She couldn't tell anyone. For days after that, Madge stayed home, tense and shivering. The first time she went out, she saw Mr. Tabor on the street. He lifted his hat politely and smiled at her. She nodded distantly and hurried on, and shortly after that, he moved to another town. Thank you for listening to this week's story, and I hope you'll join us next week as we bring you more great classic tales on Friday Night Frights. And until then, have a great week, everyone.